Hi, I'm Tate from Ohio Valley University. This is Sociology 440, Civil Rights and Liberties. What civil rights means to me. The literal definition of civil rights is the rights of citizens to political and social freedoms and equality. However, a civil right goes much deeper than just what the definition presents. Civil rights includes protection from discrimination on reasons based upon race, gender, nationality, color, sexual orientation, ethnicity, religion, or a disability. It can be either of mental or physical capacities. Civil rights also include an individual's right to privacy, the freedoms of thought and speech, expression, the press, assembly, or movement. In the United States, the Constitution takes civil rights to the highest level by protecting a person's political rights. Political rights include procedural fairness in the law. Procedural fairness takes into account the rights of the accused, the right to a fair trial, or what we call due process, the right to seek redress or a legal remedy, and rights of participation in civil societies and politics. This includes such freedoms of association, the right to assembly, the right to petition, the right of self-defense, and the right to vote. Over the centuries, and even since biblical times, civil rights have meant different things to different peoples. It has become very evident that civil and political rights need not be codified to be protected. Most democracies worldwide, such as the United States, have formal written guarantees of civil and political rights. These are represented in constitutions and statements of rights. Civil rights are considered to be natural rights. Thomas Jefferson wrote in his A Summary View of the Right of British America that a freedom or a free people claim their rights as derived from the laws of nature and not as the gift of their chief magistrate. Civil rights guarantee equal protection under the law. When civil and political rights are not guaranteed to all as part of equal protection of laws, or when such guarantees exist on paper but are not respected in practice, opposition, legal action, and even social unrest will follow. The United States protects the civil rights of their citizens with the Constitution, a series of constitutional amendments, and by decisions made by the United States Supreme Court. The United States refers to these as civil liberties. Civil liberties are personal guarantees and freedoms that the government cannot abridge, either by law or by judicial interpretation. Though the scope of the term differs among various countries, the examples of civil liberties set by the United States include the freedom from slavery or forced labor, freedom from torture or death, the right to liberty and security, freedom of conscience, religion, expression, press, assembly and association, speech, the right to privacy, the right to equal treatment, due process, and the right to a fair trial. Other civil liberties include the right to own property, the right to defend oneself, and the right to bodily integrity. Within the distinctions between civil liberties and other types of liberty, distinctions exist between positive liberty and positive rights, as well as negative liberty and negative rights. Over the last 238 years, the United States has helped the world define, explain, and outline what civil rights is all about. There have been dozens of key court cases in the United States over these same years that have sculpted what civil liberties are all about within the borders of the United States. The first key civil rights case in the United States was in 1857, Dred Scott versus Sanford. Dred Scott, a slave in Missouri, sued for his freedom on the grounds that he had lived for a time in a free territory. The court ruled against him, saying that under the Constitution he was his master's property. At the same time, the court also ruled that the Missouri Compromise, under which Missouri was admitted to the Union as a slave state, Maine as a free state, and slavery prohibited in the territory that later became Kansas and Nebraska, was unconstitutional because it deprived slave owners of their property. This decision would prove to be an indirect catalyst for the American Civil War. This decision was functionally superseded by the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which gave blacks full citizenship. The Dred Scott versus Sanford case is widely regarded by scholars as the worst decision ever made by the Supreme Court. The next major civil rights case that took place in the United States was in 1896 and was known as Plessy versus Ferguson. Here the court upheld a Louisiana law requiring restaurants, hotels, hospitals, and other public places to serve African Americans in separate but seemingly equal accommodations. In establishing this separate but equal doctrine, the court said that segregation is universally recognized as within the competency of states in the exercise of their police powers. This was the standard by which the United States ran until 1954. This is when Brown v. Board of Education overturned the Plessy versus Ferguson decision of 1896, which allowed state-sponsored segregation insofar as it applied to public education. It was a landmark United States Supreme Court case in which the court declared state laws establishing separate public schools for black and white students to be unconstitutional. During the progression of the course, we have learned about many Supreme Court cases that have molded the civil liberties in the United States, like Plessy versus Ferguson. Other key cases have demonstrated the United States' determination over the years to protect its citizens' civil rights. In 1923, an important precedent for what would become the Latino civil rights movement, the court struck down a state ban on foreign language instruction in private schools in Meyer versus Nebraska. The law had prohibited all pre-8th grade foreign language instruction, but the court said such a ban violated the 14th Amendment. In 1956, the Supreme Court, with comment, affirmed a lower court ruling declaring segregation of the Montgomery bus system illegal, giving a major victory to Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., and the thousands of anonymous African Americans who have sustained the bus boycott in the face of violence and intimidation. In 1971, in the case of Griggs versus Duke Power Company, the Supreme Court ruled that Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act prohibits not only intentional job discrimination, but also employer practices that have a discriminatory effect on minorities and women. The court held that tests and other employment practices that disproportionately screened out African American applicants for jobs at the Duke Power Company were prohibited when the tests were not shown to be job-related. Among other decisions, the United States has shown dedication to the civil rights cause. Sometimes it may take a while for the United States to get it right, but eventually the majority rule is heard and the wrongs are righted. Constitutional amendments have also shaped the civil rights and liberties in the United States for over 200 years. For example, the First Amendment prohibits the making of any law respecting of establishment of religion, impeding the free exercise of religion, abridging the freedom of speech, infringing on the freedom of the press, interfering with the right to peaceably assemble, or prohibiting the petitioning for governmental redress of grievances. There are 33 United States constitutional amendments. 27 of these have been ratified by the requisite number of states and is part of the United States Constitution. Each of the 27 amendments goes directly towards protecting the rights of the United States citizens. So the big question really is, what does civil rights mean to me? I truly believe in civil rights, the civil rights movement, and the ongoing protection of civil rights. My definition of civil rights movement is very simple. It is an ongoing process to ensure that every person is treated with the equality and respect that they deserve as human beings. A person's age, color, race, national origin, gender, disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity does not entitle a person to be treated any better or any worse than anyone else. It really is just that simple. But it's really, in fact, the government's job to ensure civil rights and liberties, especially if the same government could actually turn on the citizens and take away those same liberties by political imprisonment, denying due process, unreasonable search and seizures, and determining on their own what is truly arbitrary fairness. Some say that eliminating racism and discrimination is not a governmental responsibility, but a responsibility of the citizens. As forced civil liberties still civil liberties? All good questions and concerns. But I still have to argue with what Thomas Jefferson said and that I touched on earlier. A free people claim their right as derived from the laws of nature and not as a gift from the chief magistrate. I cannot help but think that our civil rights came from God. I was taught that God gave us all free will and that the ultimate civil right was from that. It can be taken away or even protected by governments all around the world, but to me, civil rights are God-given rights that are not governmentally issued. I'm a Christian and an American. This means that my definition of civil rights comes from not only the Constitution of the United States, but the Bible as well. By studying key cases as case reviews in the class, and by studying the United States constitutional amendments, I have found that civil rights must be fought for no matter what the religious beliefs. What God grants us, others here on earth can take away much easier than what they should be able to. I am thankful for blessing of the United States. I am thankful for being able to lead a Christian life and worship as such. My freedoms may be blessed from God, but thanks to the United States government, they are protected here on earth. And finally, throughout the history of the United States, there have been many great men and women who have fought, lobbied, protested, preached, struggled, prayed, and even bled for civil rights and liberties in this country. Through my research for this paper, I have come across some great people with some great quotes that truly sums up my feelings on civil rights and liberties. John F. Kennedy addressed the race riots in Alabama with a radio broadcast on June 11, 1963, with these subsequent words. We are confronted primarily with a moral issue, whether all Americans are to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities, whether we are going to treat our fellow Americans as we want to be treated. A little over a week later, Kennedy addressed Congress on June 19, 1963,